trials, and I like to tell a story. So I want to say thank you so much already for letting me be here to share my story. So, good evening, everyone. Everybody say, hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Okay. My name is Rain Boyd, and I am the founder of Victory Gardens by Rain. We have a simple mission, and it is to spread hope through communities after disasters by sowing seeds of fruit, faith, and education. And this is our story. On Thursday, September 26, 2004, I sat in my living room waiting for Hurricane Helene, a then Category 2 hurricane, to hit my hometown. The forecast said it was coming straight for us. I began to feel an extreme sense of urgency, not panic, but a deep-seated sense of urgency to raise awareness of the long-term impact that this would have on our land. You see, years and years ago, I began research natural disasters and the land recovery techniques that were used afterwards. A storm of this size could change an entire ecosystem and cause long-term damage to the soil. I knew that agriculture will be impacted substantially, and my community needed to be educated on soil regeneration. I began making plans. The following morning, I watched an absolute horror as the storm took a sudden turn and passed over my hometown and headed straight to the Appalachian Mountains. My stomach hit the floor. They had no idea what was coming. A hurricane in the mountains? It was completely unheard of. The mountains are not where hurricanes occur, and immediately I began to pray for this unsuspecting community. Again, I had some insight. See, Appalachia was my home. I grew up in East Tennessee. I know mountain folk. And these families that lived in the same homes for generations, these are my people. I know how life is there. It's hard and it's harsh. These are tradespeople. These are farmers. These are artists. These are musicians and craftsmen. Did you know that with trades come tools? Craftsmen use all kinds of chemicals to tan leather and to build furniture. Farmers have a ton of fertilizer, and some use chemicals to maintain their weeds. Artists have paints and chemicals to express their visions. On Friday, September 27th of 2024, Hurricane Helene hit Swannanoa, western North Carolina, full force. It was then an extratropical Category 4 major hurricane with winds up to 140 miles per hour after landfall. Once positioned over North Carolina, it took 2 whole days for the storm to wear itself out. And during this time, it caused so much flooding that a creek that only came up to my calves rose up over 27 feet, covering buildings within hours of hitting Swannanoa. The rains caused the spillways to dump from water from the reservoir, releasing 40 trillion. Everybody say trillion. That's the real word. It's a lot. Okay? And it was gallons of water that just rushed through. The water rose 13 feet, which is about knee tall, within 11 minutes. 11 minutes is how long it's going to take me just about to make this speech. The entire city of Sojourney was underwater. As you can imagine, many deaths followed. Due to the storm size and intensity, it caused a series of natural disasters to follow. There would be record-breaking landslides, hail to follow, and then wildfires. I heard all of this, and I began to plan. I spoke out to every single person that would listen. We needed to rally, and we needed to rally now. The land was contaminated. Crops were devastated. Farms were ruined. All of the businesses were destroyed. And I couldn't help with the devastation of the buildings or the loss of this year's crop, but I knew that I could clean the soil and help plan for next year's crop. I felt hopeless. I knew that in order to save the land, we needed to start remediation right then. But what could I do? I'm just a soil nerd. I didn't have any fancy credentials or government backing, but I had faith and I had hope. About 2 weeks later, I got a text from Lori Stevens. Our church had been getting supplies together to send up for immediate needs, and she was one of the organizers. She had made some connections with the locals and asked if it was okay with me to connect with some people who wanted to build some gardens. The area hit by the storm was now classified as a food desert. She asked if I could help grow food, and I said, without a moment's hesitation, I said, girl, that's what I do. Absolutely. So through generous donation, I was sent up to North Carolina. Lori and her team somehow found a hotel that was still operational, but was damaged from the flood. And y'all, let me just take a moment right here to share with you that whatever you saw on the internet and whatever you saw on the news, it was 50 times worse. The smell in the air was awful. It smelled like rot and chemicals and mold. The despair in the eyes of the locals was heart-wrenching. Even 3 weeks later, people will walk around in complete shock. I saw mountains that once stood tall and proud, covered with gashes and scars from the landslide. The land was broken and it was sad. I saw people's belongings in trees and hanging off of cliff sides. I saw children's stuffed animals covered in mud and silt. The storm left much of the land polluted, stripped of nutrients, and unable to provide food. The land was so broken and so sad, it was covered in oil and trash. And what do you do when the land is so shocked? Well, I don't know what you guys do, but in this situation, I knew exactly what to do. I was there to plant some seeds. Now, I know it seems far-fetched to go into a disaster-affected area with a pocket full of seeds and think that I was going to make a difference. Realistically, you can't meet an immediate need by giving people who are still in shock from storm trauma, some seeds and plants and expect them to be able to steward it well. As a matter of fact, when people found out that I was there to plant gardens, many of them looked at me like I was crazy. Their world had collapsed and I was making big plans that sounded like a lot of work. I knew this project was going to take time, so on my first trip, I focused on observing the land and building relationships. I met a friend at one of the resource hubs and I convinced him to plant some carrots in an old raised bed that wasn't affected by the flood. The absolute joy that was on his face when we were planting was priceless. For a few minutes, he stood straight, and you could see a small spark of hope in his eyes. One of the farmers that came to the hub to pick up some feed for his animals looked at us and he said, "That little bed of carrots ain't going to help feed us all." And I said, "Well, friend, you're right. It won't feed the world, but we will feed someone." I believe that with every seed planted, hope follows. Hope is what this town needs right now. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, "You're right, darling. We need hope." He sat down on the bed of his truck and he cried the only way an old farmer could cry. He shared that he didn't know if his herd was going to make it. His hay field was under 2 feet of silt from the front of the river. He had been breeding that line of beef for 30 years. He showed me pictures of his prize bull on his old phone like a proud papa. I knew in that moment that I was not here to complete a major soil remediation project like I thought, but to plant seeds of fruit, of faith, and of hope. Victory Gardens, the dream, was born that day. And let me be real with you guys for a moment. Hope is hard to find in the midst of a disaster. It's chaotic, scary, and people are filled with uncertainty. First responders, the government, the news, and all the resources that come along with these organizations are usually available up to 9 months. After 9 months, they move on to the next disaster. It feels like a fast and furious circus show. Locals are oftentimes left feeling traumatized and exhausted, and most of them are left without a long-term recovery plan. Knowing this, I kept in touch with folks I'd made contact with, and I waited. I just knew our time would come, so I began making more plans. January 1st, 2025, 3 months post-Helene, in a partnership with my wonderful husband, Rick, and my beautiful daughter, Tiana, Victory Gardens by Rain became an official business. We spent time writing and developing a plan to create high production gardens that involve local community members, volunteers working through land share programs. This program would work with locals who were willing to donate uncontaminated land so that we, VGBR, could build high productive gardens that would help feed the locals in need. I figured that if we provided the teams and the funds to develop and plant these gardens, then provide the education needed, the locals would be able to steward the land with a long-term lens. People thought I was crazy, but I knew I was part of a greater plan. Finally, in February, I made contact with a local woman who was willing to walk alongside of my crazy idea. She started chattering all around town about planting a community garden. People were getting excited. They were volunteering to help. I was invited back up to do a land assessment on that property, and again, Sojourney was able to find the lodging for me. It turned out that land was not perfect, and we had to pass. I waited and planned. By May, people were getting scared because food banks, churches, and government programs were starting to ration out supplies. They were running low, and it was hard to get supplies because the roads were still shut down, and some places were still only accessible by helicopter. I knew that the pantry food resources were being depleted. We needed to come up with a fresh food plan ASAP. We needed land. I continued to spread the words here at home about needing funds and people to help plant these gardens, I knew funds would come. I started getting landscape jobs and hired the best crew that I could ever ask for, and we started taking donations so that we could order supplies, soil, and raised beds. We were prepared and we were ready to go. I would travel several additional times to meet city officials and attend citywide meetings trying to convince this community that I was here to stay. Well, in small towns, word travels fast and hope is contagious. People started seeing the need and getting motivated. In June, I got another phone call saying that we had a man who was on the hunt and had found us some land to use. I called Lori and Jackie, and once again, they got me and my team to North Carolina. With the help of Sojourney Foundation and other organizations, we were able to raise $7,000 for the garden projects. This time, my crew and I had enough resources to stay for a whole week, and we had all the supplies to get started. I was introduced to a humble mountain man, Steve Sin, who I quickly realized was the heart of Swannanoa. I told him my idea, and he agreed to help me find land, and by the end of that day, we had assessed and committed 2 plots that the owner volunteered for land share programs. Finally, we could plant. By Wednesday, we had a full volunteer team and was ready to install a raised bed garden. By Thursday, we had 2 additional land commitments, and by Friday, we had a future commitment for our first public property and nonprofit alongside of the Blessing Project. The projected install for that garden will be later this spring. So within a week's time, we had 2 gardens planted and 3 additional gardens committed. How awesome is that? Mm-hmm. Okay. All this happened because a humble mountain man wouldn't take no for an answer. Steve kept asking people. I could tell this sweet man was very passionate about this project, and he would tell me stories about each person that I met. He remembers everything. He knows everyone's name, and he took me on a tour of the town. And with tears running down his cheeks, he said to me, "Rain, this town needs hope. These gardens are not only to just feed us, they're to bring us hope." Have you ever seen an old mountain man cry? It does something to you. It motivates you. I asked Steve if he would partner with me so that we could give hope to the town together, and I asked if he would lead the organized teams to keep the movement rolling. Thankfully, he agreed. Steve and I worked together all summer with me coaching planting plans, and Steve running the volunteer teams. We were able to partner with the local college staff and students as volunteers. The gardens were so successful, we made plans for distributions with local food banks and nonprofits. Through these combined efforts, we were able to distribute over 2,800 pounds of food from 2 gardens in our first season of crops. Y'all please join me in giving thanks to Steve Sin, who's right here with us today. This year, our plan is to continue to work alongside of local nonprofits, schools, and community groups to develop even more gardens and volunteer teams for each garden plot. We will educate and equip them with a year's planting plan, production distribution plan, and a harvest preservation plan. Imagine how many families we could feed when we have functional plans. It is my desire to commit 5 years per each disaster area in order to set them up with education, equipment, functional off-grid land stewardship solutions, and a staff. Imagine how much hope we can give after a disaster like Helene with a sustainable 5-year food production plan and education program. The heart behind Victory Gardens by Rain is that we are committed to traveling wherever disaster has struck in order to help restore food security and resilience. Whether it's starting a small garden that feeds one family or supporting the development of a larger scale production farm, our goal is to help people work with the land that they have and create a sustainable environment that provides as much food as possible. The goal of everything we do is education. We believe that teaching communities how to nurture their soil, grow their own food, and care for the land empowers them long after the immediate crisis has passed. More than just planting seeds, we are cultivating hope, stewardship through education and production plans, and lasting connections to the land. This program gives hope back to the community by setting them up for success and giving purpose. At Victory Gardens by Rain, we see our work as more than planting seeds and building gardens. It's a way of serving others. Every project is an opportunity to share practical wisdom towards a practical goal and restore hope. That sounded better on the paper. Hang on. Okay. It is important that we approach these projects with long-term goals. We believe that by teaching and equipping communities to grow their own food, we are living out our calling to use our gifts and services to those in need. I want to say thank you so much to Sojourney Foundation for all of your support. Without your team and partnership, these gardens wouldn't exist. You have partnered alongside of us throughout this entire process with financial support, practical support, such as travel arrangements, and even business development. What we do here at Victory Gardens brings so much joy. However, to be successful, it requires funds. All of us here today have an amazing opportunity to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. What can we do together to invest in survivors? We can invest in them for generations to come with these gardens. The success of this program will help keep showing up season after season. Please consider including Victory Gardens by Rain in your blessings by donating to the Sojourney Foundation. Together we can make a difference by planting seeds of fruit, faith, and hope. Thank you so much for your time. Woo!